Your PC isn't crashing because of your RAM. It's not your CPU. It's not even your power supply. It's a sandwich, and you bought the wrong one. Every motherboard sitting inside a computer case looks, from the outside, like a single flat slab of dark green or black fiberglass. One piece, simple. The ports are on it, the slots are on it, the chips are soldered to it. It looks like a circuit board the way a book looks like a stack of paper. Technically accurate, completely misleading. A modern motherboard is a layered composite. Sheets of copper traces pressed between core materials and pre-preg resin, laminated under heat and pressure into something that holds its shape and carries signals. A budget board ships with 4 of those layers. A high-end consumer board ships with 8. Server and workstation boards go higher, 10, 12 layers when the application demands it. That number, the layer count, is not listed prominently on the box. It's not in the spec sheet summary. It's buried, if it's disclosed at all. And it is the single most important physical specification that determines whether your system will actually run stable at the speeds you paid for. Here's why. Electricity moving through a copper trace doesn't just move through the trace, it creates an electromagnetic field around it. Pack enough traces close enough together, which is exactly what happens when you're routing signals for a modern processor, multiple memory slots, PCIe lanes, and power delivery across a board that has to fit inside a standard ATX footprint, and those fields start talking to each other. An unwanted voltage gets induced in an adjacent trace. The signal that was supposed to carry a clean 1 or a clean 0 arrives corrupted. This is crosstalk, and it is the fundamental physics problem that every motherboard engineer is working against. The solution is geometry. Add layers and you create space to insert dedicated ground planes and power planes between the signal layers. These planes act as electromagnetic barriers, shields that absorb and redirect interference before it reaches sensitive data traces. A 4-layer board has limited real estate for this. The signal layers and the power delivery infrastructure are competing for physical space. The electromagnetic isolation that a well-designed 8-layer board achieves almost as a structural side effect is something a 4-layer board has to fight for and often loses. This was an acceptable trade-off for years. At DDR3 speeds, at DDR4 speeds in the lower ranges, the margins were wide enough that most 4-layer designs could hold the line. That era is over. DDR5 running at 6,000 megatransfers per second, and DDR6 pushing beyond that changes the physics of what the board itself has to do. At those frequencies, the copper traces connecting the processor to the memory slots don't behave like wires, they behave like antennas. The signal is moving fast enough that the physical length and geometry of the trace matters in ways that are no longer engineering footnotes, they are the dominant design constraint. A 4-layer board typically lacks the vertical space to fully separate high-speed memory traces from the noise generated by power delivery components running nearby. At lower frequencies, the noise is slow enough that the signal can outrun it. At DDR5 7200, the noise and the signal are overlapping in time. The result is bit flips, single binary values that arrive wrong. One corrupted bit in the right place generates a blue screen. Dozens of corrupted bits per second generates a system that crashes intermittently with no obvious pattern and no error message that points at the real cause. The box might say the board supports 7,200 mega transfers per second. That claim is technically defensible because the chipset can negotiate that speed. The PCB cannot reliably carry it. Signal integrity, the actual ability of the physical board to transmit a clean signal within required voltage margins, is what determines stable operation, and it is almost never the number on the box. Expert aside, signal integrity at high memory frequencies is governed by voltage margin, the difference between the minimum voltage the memory controller can cleanly read as a 1 and the actual voltage arriving at the pin.
4-layer designs routinely compress this margin to the point where the specification is met at room temperature but fails under load or thermal stress. This is why some instability issues are reported as random. They're not random, they're thermally triggered margin violations. There's a second physics problem specific to 4-layer designs: path length. When a board has fewer layers, traces routing around components sometimes can't take the most direct path. They detour. That detour creates something called an impedance mismatch, a point in the trace where the electrical characteristics of the conductor change. At that mismatch, a portion of the signal doesn't continue forward. It reflects back toward the source. The processor receives its own signal echoing at it, slightly delayed, and interprets it as incoming data. This is signal reflection, and it is one of the reasons high-frequency memory training fails on boards that are physically incapable of routing cleanly. 8-layer boards allow for a manufacturing process called backdrilling, a technique where the stub of a drilled via, the vertical channel connecting layers, is precisely removed after fabrication. The stub of an undrilled via acts as a tiny signal trap, catching high-frequency components of a waveform and reflecting them back. Backdrilling eliminates the stub. The via passes the signal cleanly. This is not an exotic process. It is a standard feature of the manufacturing workflow for boards with enough layers to make it worth doing. Now here's where this gets directly useful, because the same physics explains one of the most persistent myths in PC building. 4-slot motherboards should be more capable than 2-slot motherboards. More slots means more flexibility, more upgrade paths, more RAM capacity. Except at high frequencies, more slots means more stubs. On a 4-slot board, the traces have to branch to reach every slot. In a T-topology layout, the signal splits evenly toward 2 destinations. In a daisy chain layout, it hits the first slot and continues to the second. Either way, on a 4-layer PCB, the traces serving the empty slots don't disappear just because there's no RAM in them. They're still there, dead-end copper wire hanging off the active signal path, catching noise, bouncing reflections back into the channel.
The performance ceiling on a 4-slot, 4-layer board isn't set by the processor. It isn't set by the memory kit. It's set by the topology. This is why the motherboards used to set memory overclocking world records almost always have 2 slots, not because the engineers couldn't fit 4, because removing the extra traces removes the stubs, and removing the stubs cleans up the signal enough to sustain speeds that a standard 4-slot consumer board cannot physically achieve. You're not losing features, you're gaining physics. Now for the part you've definitely experienced and probably misread. You build a new PC. You hit the power button, the fans spin up, the RGB blinks on, and then nothing. Black screen. 30 seconds pass, 60, you start quietly drafting the return shipping label in your head. Then the BIOS splash appears and everything boots normally. That wasn't a malfunction, that was training. Your motherboard was running a negotiation between its firmware and your RAM. It sent test patterns down those copper traces and measured how distorted they were by the time they arrived. It adjusted the read and write reference voltages, the thresholds that define what counts as a 1 versus a 0, and tuned the termination resistance to compensate for the specific crosstalk and reflection characteristics of that particular board's copper geometry. Every board is slightly different. Every memory kit is slightly different. The training process is the system finding the stable operating window where all of those variables line up. On a well-designed 8-layer board, the signal arrives clean enough that the window is easy to find. Training completes quickly. On a 4-layer board, fighting crosstalk on all sides, the firmware is searching for a usable signal in conditions that work against it. If it can't find a stable window at the rated speed, it doesn't crash, it retreats. It trains your 7200 megatransfer kit down to 4800 or 4400 and boots successfully at the lower speed. No error, no notification, just a quiet 20% of performance left on the floor permanently because the board underneath the specs couldn't hold the line. Going from 4 layers to 8 in PCB fabrication isn't a modest cost bump. More lamination cycles, tighter layer registration tolerances, more material, higher per-unit failure rates during manufacturing before yields stabilize. The raw cost of the substrate alone typically increases by 50 to 100% before a single component is placed on it. That is the invisible specification. 2 boards, same chipset, same port layout, same feature list on the box. One is 4 layers, one is 8. The price gap between them, often $150 to $200, isn't paying for a fancier interface. It's paying for the physical substrate that determines whether the system runs at the speeds it's supposed to run at. The reason it's not on the box is because most buyers don't know to look for it. Now you do. A motherboard moves data. What stores it is a different problem entirely, and how your SSD actually holds on to information when the power is off is stranger than most people expect. That one's next. Subscribe. The engine room is just getting started.